and this is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. This is a continuation. This is part three of strategies for freeing yourself from toxic people. So, if it is your desire to free yourself from some toxicity, you're in the right place. This is, again, part three of this series. If you'd like to see the other two parts, part one is on my channel. It's on my YouTube channel, and part two is on Ike Ogiamian's channel. So this is part three, all about strategies for freeing yourself from toxic people. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. What's happening, man? How you doing?
Hey. What's up? I'm doing well. Pardon the sound of what sounds like an aircraft or radio static or whatever over there. I'm just um, boiling some water to make some tea.
All
But
right.
other than that, all is good. All is well. How about yourself?
I am all right. I'm doing just fine. Just fine. All right. So, as I said, this is the third part of this video. This is a third part, a three-part series. Hopefully, we'll get through the rest of the points here, um, and then stretch into a fourth part. But this has been a fruitful discussion. Uh, you have any highlights you'd like to sort of start us out with, and then I can send us on over to take a look at the rest of the video.
Indeed. Well, I would reiterate what you started with by saying that people should go check out the first part, which was on your channel, second part on my channel, and then the third part now. And the first part was mainly about drawing those boundaries and recognizing the bad behaviors, right? In the second part, we really did get into the first of all, we only did like two items, right? I think we did several,
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe three. Um, but we really did get into the psychology of you regulating yourself, right? You having the self control, and you being the problem a lot of times. And we focused on that aspect of people who want to draw you into the whirlpool of the social milieu, the social. I don't want to just be simplifying it by saying social activities, but getting you into a social circle of influence whereby the group is a means by which they control you, right? And I hope that makes sense, right? But other than that, I'm ready to continue.
All right, all right. So let's go ahead and head on over. All right, and this is fair use, and this is starting at part 10 of 15 ways intelligent people deal with difficult and toxic people. So let's go ahead and keep it going.
Problems. Toxic people are often the first to place blame when something goes wrong. They do this to free themselves from having to make any effort to right the wrong. It's very easy to hate stuff and blame people, but it's much harder to make changes. Intelligent people will dodge the power of a toxic person by looking for a solution to a problem rather than just focusing on the guilty party. When you help to make something right, whether you had anything to do with it or not, it shows that you are compassionate, protective, and loyal, and this will always beat toxic people. Number 11, squash.
So would you think of that?
This video is definitely very biased towards. Now I like it, but it is very biased towards. Well, shall I say biased against that extroverted feeling thing that we were railing about in the last episode. The last thing I mentioned, which was people whom are primarily focused on the group. Okay, so this extroverted feeling thing, is a feeling, right? So it's not a thinking mechanism. It's not about thinking, it's about feeling, and the feeling is about the group. There's some other feeling called introverted feeling, which is about you and your values and your sense of self, which is quite different. Okay, it's a different thing. um Anyone who's a fan of Ayn Rand, she's a super introverted feeling advocate, whereby everything is about the in me, myself, and brah, beyond just the thinking of me, myself, and that is rational, but that feeling of it, the feeling of your values and all that kind of stuff. But the reason why I say that this particular video is biased towards the extroverted feeling types is because they tend to do this blame assignment thing a lot. And it is even when they don't do it in a toxic in their way, in their mind, toxic way, where it's like, oh, they're just they're causing a ruckus about it, but they tend to want to, first of all, once they see the problem, there's a tendency to want to talk about whose fault it was.
Right.
um Let me just say that first. I'm not gonna move on to the solution and whatnot, but there is a tendency to want to point out whose fault it is, and to steel man their position. It's because this is how they view the world, right? Rather than, if it's, let's say if it's you're fixing something and it's an electrical thing, and you look at wires, right? Which wire is loose? They want to see which person, caused it. That's the first thing they want to kind of see, because that's the way they push and pull the world. That's the way they are pushed and pulled in the world. That'll be the steel man of the position. But we, I can say more on that. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean it's meh. I mean it's all right. I may have some more thoughts about it later. That particular point. I don't think it's a bad point. So let's go to the next one. And
Squash negative self-talk. Sometimes you absorb the negativity of other people. There's nothing wrong with feeling bad about how someone is treating you, but your self-talk can either intensify the negativity or help you move past it. Negative self-talk is unrealistic, unnecessary, and self-defeating. It sends you into a downward emotional spiral that is difficult to pull out of. Make a conscious effort to avoid negative self-talk at all costs.
all right. So this is kind of like, don't believe the haters. You know, believe in yourself. Self confidence. Um, don't worry about what you can't control. Focus on the stuff that you can control. Apostle Paul talks about the things to meditate on. Lovely and beautiful, and the good things, and the other stuff you have to kind of let go. And the sort of insidious nature of the toxic person in making little digging comments constantly, and before you know it, now you're hearing those thoughts, almost hearing them talking. Yeah, gotta fight
Hmm.
that off.
Hmm. Um, Let me push back on that one.
Sure.
This is one that I, if I were to assume that what underlies it is, a, you not being, what is the word I'm looking for? You're not getting paralyzed. Yeah, you're not being paralyzed by this thing. And B, this thing being like just unconsciously driving you, right? By this thing, I mean, this negative self talk. And then C, that it's something that came from an external source that you mentioned last, which is the haters, right? As you started out, don't believe the haters. If the haters have put something in you and then it is formed, it is an idea pathogen. Shout out to Gad Sad. It's an idea pathogen in your head. It is paralyzing you and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I can see that. Um, the one of the issues I have with it is this negative self-talk thing doesn't sufficiently describe, or it's not a direct pointer to these things which I just mentioned, right? Or the things which you mentioned, as a matter of fact, right? Because you immediately started out by talking about the external sources of these things, that they're coming from outside, they get into you and such, but they just call it negative self-talk. Okay. Now, if you're stuck in a rut, or like it's a rot, right? That's how you pronounce it. Anyways, if you're stuck in a rut in your head and all that kind of stuff, I would describe that in more precise ways, right? It's almost like you're possessed by this negative thing that is just nagging you in your head and all that kind of stuff. I would not even call that negative self-talk. Now, so part of the reason why I have an issue with this point is because I think it points to something else, and they're not being sufficiently precise, or more correctly, they're not being sufficiently fundamental. There's something fundamental here that they're pointing to, and they're pointing it to something they're calling negative self-talk. Because negative self-talk, for me, is something that you should get used to. If it means quite literally you criticizing yourself, right? Again, I'm a big fan of calling myself a BAN, you know, eh, 10 times in the morning, just like saying my Hail Marys or whatever.
Uh,
Like, and again, also it's about what you do with it, right? That's a motivating factor. I remember I talked about a conversation I had with it wasn't really a conversation. It was a question a friend of mine asked me in college about, like, it was like, do you think we're doing as do you think we're what amounted to, are we living up to our potential, right? Are we, do you think we're f ups? And I was like, yes, and that was the answer he was looking for, right? And that is the answer for me every day. But it's like, what do you do with that then, right? For me, it's okay because I'm constantly looking at the future and I'm constantly looking at what I could be. But also there's a balancing act of knowing that you could, obviously failure is an option, right? You might not live up to the whole thing, but this does not necessarily destroy you or destroy life. After all, life is not about necessarily that. I find this to be a healthy constitution, a healthy frame of mind, where 100% that you're an F up, okay? But you're still striving forward without this whole thing being your ego being so small that it's about being an F up or not. It's like, no. Again, fundamentally, and not to make this or get all fundamentalist about things, but that's what I do, right, Dr. Thunder?
yeah.
Fundamentally, psychological health is about being okay with existence, not what you amounted to, not whether you messed up in this. Oh, could I be a better father? Did I miss this thing? It's like, dude, in all these areas, you're there's no way you could meet up to your ideal, right? And this should not then slow you down to be like, oh, I'm not moving towards the ideal, or make it seem like, oh, I must reach perfection. It's like, no, you keep on just moving forward. A healthy frame of mind for me is one whereby this negative self-talk, which I've now redefined to just be you criticizing yourself and you knowing that you're not living up to your ideal, is 100% necessary. Otherwise, you're just going to be a quivering mess, like, or you're gonna crumble. You're gonna break down at some point. You're going through checking boxes in a rather unconscious way, is the way I see it. Otherwise,
Yeah, I think the only reason I started with the external thing, I was trying to angle it the way that they were, right? With the source being outside of you. Now, I agree that a certain amount of personal, being hard on yourself, is good. I remember I had seems like fairly recently I had a conversation with one of my students on this whole idea of being too hard on yourself and what that actually means, and that I tend to reject that thought. Can you actually be too hard on yourself? I'm not sure that you can. I think that you can have an unrealistic expectation. I think you can measure things in a way that doesn't correspond with reality, and then therefore not be able to achieve whatever the goal is. But I don't think that's you being too hard on yourself, right? I think you should be as hard on yourself as possible, and be critical of yourself when you don't achieve at a certain level, right? But that's different from quote unquote being down on yourself, or being depressed, or being falling into sort of apathy or something, or whatever it is. All that stuff is totally different. I don't think that being hard on yourself is the precursor to depression or something.
Why do you think people use this? Why do people think make this conflate these issues? In other words, for example, this negative self-talk thing, or being hard on yourself thing, and you can clearly see that there's these other things that they're not quite precisely pointing to. What is going on there? Why is that in the zeitgeist in terms of the language people use?
Um,
It just pops like something we just read it somewhere and they just say it, or
yeah. I mean, it is just something that people say, and there is something that they mean by it. I don't know that it's necessarily just parroting. Could be parroting the words, but having a sense of what they mean. It's just not particularly precise.
hmm
But I think it's more akin to, um, I don't know, some sort of neurosis. Um,
mm okay.
some sort of, paralysis. Something that I think we would characterize as not being healthy, undue
hmm
stress or something, or I think
mm
it's associated with some of those kinds of things. But that's see, I don't really connect those things. Um, I don't connect those things with this idea of being quote unquote too hard on themselves. Somebody just made it a point, or just made a comment in the chat. Let's see here. He says, when done properly, a self deprecating person keeps themselves grounded. Exactly.
hmm hmm hmm
Unless
So I like that.
an eternal optimist is an eternal fool. You know? Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Especially also because something we mentioned last time when we talked about the fact that, as you press on further and achieve more, there's going to be more problems, and a lot of which you might not be able to tackle. There's going to be more battles that you have to choose not to fight, more L's you have to take. Um,
Yeah.
Now, when I say that, it kind of almost sounds like, then what the hell are you fighting for? But let me back up from that a little bit and address something that I like the fact that you talked about this kind of delusional. That's one thing, right? That you didn't quite say delusional, but that you may have an unrealistic appreciation for the goals or your abilities, or let's just say the goals, right? And Jordan Peterson. Now, let me talk about my anecdotal experience with certain types of people. Certain types of people, um, they tend to be women, and it's because women are particularly expressive in this way, right? They would express a certain amount of dissatisfaction based on where they are currently in life. They'll say, I, I would have hoped to be to I thought I would be further along than I am right now. It's
Right.
a very different kind of conversation that I said I had with my friend in college. It was like, are we F ups? And it's like, yes, of course, we know we're F ups. Like, we know the potential, let me not call potential, like the gifts that we have, right? And we know that we're not fully out there cultivating that stuff.
Right.
If you don't know that, if you have not taken full stock of that, that's a problem, right? You can't just be here gifted and pretending like you know what I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
um, but this person would say something like that, and it'll be coming from a place of depression, and it reminds me of something Dr. Jordan Peterson said, also talking about women that he would have on his couch as a therapist, going through this talk of like, oh, I thought that by 28 I would have done this and that, and he came from a rather pragmatic position, which would not be the place I came from, which is like, how the hell did you like who? So you're talking about when you were 10 years old, you had some kind of idea, and now you now you're beating yourself up about it. Like, what the hell did you know when you were 10 about what any of this was, what goals were worth pursuing, how difficult they were to achieve X, Y, and Z, right? So I
Mm.
find that his position to be his position is actually quite correct. Like, yeah, of course, like they don't know anything. The For me, uh, I just look at it from the internal as well. I don't quite understand it. I don't quite get how that you're using that yardstick to beat yourself down. Um, how could you be so externally focused? I guess is what I'm saying. How could you be so externally focused that you're here talking about, oh, I'm not where I should be, and anyways, it's a interesting point.
Yeah, yeah. You know, something the mm, okay. So I think one of the useful aspects of the idea of God is God is the one thing that um, let's see here. God is the one thing that is big enough to never, for us to never lose our sense of wonder. You know, um, you can get sort of bored, or you can burn through, a lot of things. Um, but that idea is big enough so that it cannot be the idea of God is big enough that it cannot be exceeded. It can't be approached even. It's it's so big and vast and overwhelming, right? And it makes me
Mm-hmm.
think, although we want to protect people from being overwhelmed, I don't know that we should be protecting people from a sense of being overwhelmed. I think that is actually a good thing. I think being overwhelmed is a good thing. Now, but I also think that that's separate from um, being able to still make progress, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the standard is not about uh, our ability to achieve it or not, to reach it or not. That's not the point of a standard. The standard is just another point that's far enough away from us that shows us that we have a lot of things that we can improve. We got a lot of stuff to work on to even get anywhere in the ballpark.
I
And
really like that you said that. That was the thing I was struggling to say. Sorry for cutting you off there. That was the thing I was
no, no,
struggling to
no,
say at the
that was
end
good.
there about when the person says, "I'm not where I should be." I'm just thinking like exactly what you said, which is what a great opportunity, right? And again, this opportunity is not, it's not me looking external, it's me looking like, oh, all the things I could be working on internally with regards to the things that Mr. Stewart here is saying in the chat. Like my self confidence will be, a very small way of putting it. Yes, with regards to my self confidence, but also going back to what you're saying with regards to the bigger picture, right? How crazy are you talking about these little things, right? It's interesting. It's very interesting, and now perhaps because of modern times, when you say God, I don't think people even really understand what you're saying, right? People feel quite disconnected from that notion, and there there isn't again a zeitgeist that pushes the notion of a God or God for people to be able to measure themselves against, and um, to for them to have an appropriate fear, quote unquote fear relationship towards, such that everything else pales in comparison, and so on. Um, for and I think this is one of the reasons why I think Jordan Peterson is very um, important, but not necessarily for everybody. Again, because he bridges the gap for this about this God question to those whom are sufficiently philosophical, which is just another way of saying sufficiently intuitive. And not everybody is, only a small percentage of people are. But if you're philosophical and intuitive, then he then bridges it by you now seeing that, oh, it's the transcendent, right? When I say transcendent, people who are not so philosophical and intuitive, they I've lost them again. But when you connect with that, that there's something that transcends. And as a matter of fact, I was listening to one of his seminars on Exodus, which he's finally doing now. Which, by the way, he's doing the Exodus thing right now. Because he did the whole Jordan Peterson's biblical series. He did Genesis, and now he started Exodus. But he's doing it as a panel, and I have beef with the panel style because I'm not here to listen to Dennis Prager. Shout out to him. Okay, but I'm not here to. Oh, I'm not, it's not the same flavor. That's not the thing. But again, I'm heavily biased towards the philosophical, intuitive. I want to hear about transcendence, and I want to focus on one sentence for 2 hours, right? That's what I'm there for, not for some literalist type, stuff. Anyways, I was listening to that, and there was something about the midwives of the Hebrews fearing God and disobeying the pharaohs, and the idea of being afraid of transgressing against the transcendent, transgressing against the eternal, transgressing against something bigger than even a tyrant, right? Or whatever little regular things are in life. I find that to be very important. However, I don't really know how to connect people with this, or how people can connect with this, especially in these times, right? So that's my little spiel.
Yeah, it's I was thinking you were talking to this idea of God, the Judeo-Christian idea of God. There's something in the New Testament, and I'm struggling to think of the phrasing exactly, but there's a statement in there that suggests that God is not he's not trying to compete with us. We're like, say, how do we do this? I can't think of the phrasing. I'll probably think of it later. But so in one sense, he tells us to be perfect as he is perfect. But then in the other sense, he's not really trying to compete against us. So it's not an issue of him having some misgiving about us achieving as highly as we can. We can't compete with him anyway. But it's not just in the same it's not just like in the same dimension. It's not in the same dimension. It's like he's a different substance, so it's not we really not playing the same game. But in one sense, since he has put a foot in this existence, right, we can like I said, the standard being perfect is as your God in heaven is perfect, or your Father in heaven is perfect. So that was not very skillfully articulated. However, let's keep going.
Number 12. Spend time with loyal friends. It's important to develop a strong support network of loyal and trustworthy people. Intelligent people know that they don't have to be everybody's friend, and not everybody is deserving of their friendship. In turn, they reward their friends' loyalty and trust by showing that it works both ways. True friendship and fidelity is one of the rarest and most valuable commodities you will ever have in life. So don't allow this to be corrupted by toxic, negative, and untrustworthy people. Number 13.
All right. Phileo love. Yeah. So what do you think of this one?
This one, okay. So the two things going on. There's the first part, which is the which you mentioned at the end, which is just a repetition again of boundaries, right? So obviously, you're not going to let these toxic people in. Things like the first three or four numbers, number one, two, three, and four, kind of covered that. But then, on the other hand, even though it was not explicitly mentioned, implied in this is some place of solace, some place of replenishment, some place where you can get whatever it is that you get from people, right? But you're getting it from the right kinds of people, right? You're getting it from quote unquote loyal people. Even though when he says loyal, I'm like kind of cringe a little bit, like you know, loyalty can be quite blind, right? Well, let not get into part of the splitting hairs about doesn't necessarily have to be blind, but when you put on loyal as the point there with friendship, it's like perhaps I should ask you, what do you think people mean, or what did he mean by loyal friends? Because he's trying to separate the bad friendships by using this word loyal. And I know you can't write a chapter about every freaking thing, right? So you have to use words as big bucket markers, right? So, but why? Well, but what's the loyalty thing? What do you think they're getting at here? Just supporting you regardless? What's going on?
Well, I think it's important to I think it's important to have some people where um, you need to be able to let your hair down.
Mhm.
um, I think the nature of the world, the nature of business, the nature of politics, dealing with people in general, fighting, the corporate battle, you know, climbing up um, climbing up the corporate ladder, climbing up the academic ladder, the military, in the military, and climbing up in ranks, and anything associated with people and hierarchy.
Mhm.
The nature of it is that there's a lot of sort of tugging, straining, a lot of uh, double crossing, a lot
Mhm.
of stress, you know, and it's just good to be able to. Uh, it's good to be able to not have to watch your back
Mhm.
100% of the time. Okay, now I'll take I'll take 90%. I'll take 95%, but that 5%, that's a big
Mhm.
deal. And without that
Mhm.
5%, I think it I don't think that people are supposed to
Mhm.
uh, be in an adversarial sort of kind of situation all the time. I think we can
Yeah.
handle a lot of it, but I think it's important to have some sort of oasis, some sort of something away from that, you know. And so I think that's, in a sense, he uses the word loyal, but really that seems to be what we're talking about here.
Mhm. So, Stuart perhaps was saying something else, but the word unchanging is uh, is a good word here in relating to. Maybe I'll make it just personal. Personal. So the general frame will be, well, not everybody. You can't let your hair down with everybody, and not just because not just because they're toxic people, right? These people whom you cannot let your hair down completely with. It's not because they're toxic people. It's because they don't get you, right? They don't get the type of person, don't get the type of cat that you are, right? And if we follow our cat analogy, dogs don't tend to get cats, right? There's always a sneaking suspicion that dogs have of cats, and it's fine. I recall when I moved to the United States, um, there, there, I was going to move in somewhere um, with a particular family, and I knew that this was going to be an issue. In other words, I knew my cat-like tendencies was going to be an issue, and I knew that these are the kind of people who would be like, "Oh, why are you always by yourself? Why are you always over there in the room? Why don't you come out? And is there something with you?" That I knew that was going to be an issue before I went. I was like, "Oh my god," because where I was free to be left alone and just be left alone. But anyways, this is just an example of the people whom get you and people whom don't get you. But going to the unchanging part, that is a very important characteristic for me, in the sense that the type of people I connect with are, there's a certain kind of solidity about them. Okay. Now, they might be wild and crazy. Let me give you an example. Let's say Kaizo, for example. He's like a troll and he's whatever. He's Kaizo, right? But you would not expect that at some point Kaizo is just all of a sudden gonna flip on you and just, you know, let's just, some crazy stuff out of from some emotional place is just gonna come out and he's just gonna you get what I'm saying, right?
Yep.
So this is a particular type, it's a thinking type, and I have a preference for the thinking types. Okay. There's a certain solidity with them. Again, no matter how whatever the hell they, while they are, there's a certain constancy. You can just depend on them to be that person. Okay, because after all, thinking is easier to grab a hold of, even if you don't agree with what they think, right? But it's solid, and I that is where that's my crew, that's my team, that's where I find myself being able to let my hair down. If you let your hair, I find that when I let my hair down around feeling types, it tends to be the case that there is a lot of judgment associated with it.
Oh no, you can't do that. Yeah, yeah, it's tough, man. That's the poison pill right there.
The poison pill.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because I like one of the distinctions you drew in one of our previous. It might have been in the first or the second episode of this series. When you were talking about how introverts understand extroverts very well. It's the extroverts that don't understand introverts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, you didn't say it in exactly that way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's basically, it seems to me, that what you were saying. And I find that to be totally the case. And I think it's interesting that I don't judge extroverts. I may prefer not to be that way myself. I may be like, man, that would be exhausting. But I don't judge them. I'm not thinking that there's something wrong with them for being that way. But that is not. But that grace is not extended, it seems to me, by extroverts to introverts. And case in point is what it is that you were talking about letting your hair down. You have to be extremely careful what extroverts you share certain kinds of things with, because they don't understand you, and it'll be like it's like earth-shattering information or something. It's like, what's wrong with you? What kind of weirdo, are you? And it's like, well, I've been the same the whole time, and there's a lot of other people that are actually introverts also. They just don't tell you this, and this is why. So, yeah, that's it's too bad. It's too bad that it is that way, because it seems to me that, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with that introspection thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The introspection thing definitely would make it such that the introvert is rather cognizant of the workings of both of humans, right? You know, that's number one. And then they're also, perhaps because they're introspective and kind of, especially if you're an introverted thinker type, then they're gonna see what's going on. They're gonna have some kind of logic, some kind of framework for what the extrovert is about and what they're doing, right? It's like, okay, cool, bam, bam, bam. I even like to talk about the fact that, hey, we're social animals, and obviously this is how it has to work from a system standpoint. If social stuff is the goal, social cohesion is the mechanism by which things move, and not critical thinking and all these other kinds of things that some people might hope it is. Okay, then obviously then this is going to be the way the system works. So yes, the introvert is more likely to kind of see that thing. Um, it is, there is a, you see, the extrovert tends to want to control you, right? They want to change you in a particular way as opposed to just understand and leave you alone, right? They want to they want to they think there's something wrong, and they want to fix you.
it's like, dude, I'm an introvert. Okay,
They're like,
why do
no,
you keep trying to
but like, no, but
be
that's
an
wrong.
extrovert? I'm not
That's
an
wrong.
extrovert.
That's wrong. That's not right. That's not right. There's something wrong with that. And then if you add the feeling thing, which I talked about before, because you see, feeling is heavily about judgment. Not what I mean is, it's heavily about a value. It's like, so feeling is not about feeling angry. It's about what do you value in the world, and hence, whenever you give, if you're a thinker type, like an extreme thinker that just thinks about everything, maybe a little too much. When you express yourself to a feeler, they take things in through this kind of value framing, as though, rather than you just giving them some facts or some thoughts, they never think that thoughts can be independent from some kind of deep intention, right? Hence, what tends to happen is, down the line, they'll turn around and use those thoughts against you. That's what tends to happen.
Right.
They're gonna pull that up and be like, "Oh, that's why that you said." I was like, "Dude, we were having a philosophical conversation."
Right.
But
right.
philosophy doesn't exist for them. Philosophy does not exist in their world. It's no, no, no. I hear all the time this type of thing, like, "Oh, you claim that you do things because of X, but it's really because of Y," right? And I'm just like, why would I have to be playing such crazy manipulative games? So it's all, yeah. These types are they're exhausting.
Yeah, but when people do that, I'm like, oh, you're thinking that I do that because that's what you do. I see now.
Yeah, projection is an MFR.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'll tell you, this is okay. So this is I had a meeting. It was a church gig that I used to have, that I don't work there anymore, and I was, and I'm I'm a thinker. I'm measured. I'm very stoic. I don't wear my feelings on my sleeves. I allow people to say what they're going to say. It doesn't really affect me, even if they're being like really critical of me. I'm like, okay, all right, we can make that adjustment. Even if they're being critical and they're actually perhaps too ignorant to be critical in the way that they're trying to be critical, I'll still be like, okay, fine, all right. It's not about if the stuff is logically consistent or if you know what you're talking about or not. It's you're providing a service, and an aspect of the service is to help and to serve the people wherever they are, no matter how ignorant or inept they are, whatever it is. you're trying to serve and help them. And so you have to kind of put that stuff on the shelf and say, okay, consistency, all of that kind of stuff, logic, rationality, all that kind of stuff. Just put that over there. And I'm okay with that. But I was in this meeting, and there was actually criticism of the use of sheet music. Now, mind you, none of the people in the room that were being critical could even read music. But yet they were criticizing because we actually knew what we were doing and the music was played correctly, accurately, the right way, that they were trying to find something to criticize about reading music. And it was like, I was like, this is incredible. I don't even know what to tell you. I don't even know what to say. So you're going
what were they saying? I'm curious. Like, well, how did they twist? What kind of pretzel did they twist themselves into in order to criticize reading music?
Well, hold up. Let me. I'm just saying this to say this next point.
Okay.
You're going to try to control how I do my job. You're going to try to micromanage how I execute well during the service, what it is that I'm going. So I have to do it the way you want me to do it. I remember I was watching an episode of The Office, and this is one of the later episodes where Michael Scott, he's moving away with Holly, and so he's trying to find his replacement, and what is it? Will Ferrell is the guy that he brings in. And I can't remember his names. I think his last name was McEvers. I can't think of his first name now, the character's name, but that's okay. It's Will Ferrell. And Will Ferrell is like really, really nervous about public presentations. And there's this goofy presentation called the Dundies that Michael Scott started. And so as a sort of segue, as a sort of dovetail of Michael leaving the company and this guy coming in, they're going to co-host the Dundies. And and Will Ferrell is super nervous about it and everything else. And so he thought of a way in his mind, for him to be able to do it where he was not nervous about it. But Michael was like, no. You can't do it that way. You have to do it this other way, which created a lot of anxiety. Now, nobody would have known the difference. But he had to try to control the way he was trying to think about it in his own mind. And it's like, dude, it's not enough just to have somebody do a good job, however they do the good job, whatever they have to go through, whatever their process is. It's not your process, but it's somebody else's process. But you have to criticize the methodology, the approach that they use to execute, because you're oriented differently. And in this case that I was talking about, they didn't even have the skills to be able to do what it was that me and the rest of the band were doing. So it's just it's incredible. It's incredible how that whole feeler, the extroverted feelings, it's just, look, just allow me to do, if I want to be in my head, if I want to be quiet and don't speak and wait until it's appropriate for me to speak, and that's how I do things, just let me do that. If you want to hog the meeting, talk the whole time, sound like a freaking idiot most of the time, because because the nature of it is the more you talk, the more opportunities for you to sound like a freaking idiot. That's how that works. Talk less,
Mhm.
and you'll have less risk of sounding like a freaking idiot. And that's my approach.
Yeah. You know, better be quiet than thought of fool than to speak and remove all doubt, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're gonna
He that speaks
100%.
he that speaks is a fool. He that does not speak is esteemed a man of understanding. That's book.
The people look that trying to control you in terms of the way you do your job. So let me give an example. I'm not going to be long-winded about it. It's just and it's going to be a general. I'm going to generalize it. Basically,
You're not going
let's
to
say
use an
you're
office illustration and then talk too long, like I did. Go ahead.
Oh, I might end up talking too long after the preamble of promising not going to talk too long. But basically, the idea here is okay. If in sales, right? There are introverts in sales too. They tend to be more snipers, right? They tend to go deep. Just the same way, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, right? So, introverted thinker type is gonna go very deep into things, not very surface level. Maybe their deal time is gonna take longer, but they're gonna tend to have higher numbers, right? So they're not having all this many deals coming through, but it's gonna be a big deal every 2 months or something like that. That's gonna be their method. Now, granted, there's feasts and famines for everybody. This is an important factor. Yeah. Like everyone goes through the cycle. Whether you're the extroverted type that's just going out there grinding and shotgunning everybody, you're gonna have your low times. Either it's a low year for all kinds of reasons, because of the industry, because of the Fed, because of China. Who knows, right? Why these economic cycles and the business cycle happens. But what tends to happen is this: when the introvert is just having his particular kind of slow time or famine, the extroverts want to then that's their time now to say, hey, you see, what you really should be doing, okay, is doing what I do, right? You gotta go out there and knock on their door. You gotta see more clients. I'm like, that's not gonna. Well, number one, it's impossible to try to be these two people. Again, going back to the whole thing about introverts understanding extroverts more. It's like, yeah, but you can't do both. You can't be going deep and be surface at the same time.
Yes.
That's not how. Yeah, you can't do both. This is how you run your stuff. You stay at the surface level and you gather more stuff. You make a number that way. I tend to go deep, therefore it takes a little bit longer, and I get more out of it. I can't just but the thing about sales is when you're making your number, they can't really say anything. But just wait till things start slowing down a little bit. They'll rush in like, you see, this is why you should be doing what I do. Yeah, so it's funny though.
Yeah, that's rather frustrating. That's rather frustrating, I have to admit, because again, I'm not running over to you telling you that you need to spend more alone time. But somehow you think it's your job. It's your job to tell me that I need to go out and mingle and be around more people and stuff. Get out of here, man. If you want to do that, then you do it. I'm not doing that. All right, let's. Oh, it's funny. Okay, let's keep going.
13. Don't waste energy on pointless conflicts. Some toxic people have a need to start conflict with anybody who is willing to accept their invitation to argue. Even worse, there is often no point to the arguments that toxic people start. There is no desire to have a healthy debate or to come to a consensus, and intelligent people are quick to recognize this. Your best response is to simply disengage or to ignore the attempts altogether. Number 14.
But don't
Mm.
do that in private. Make sure you do it in public.
Uh-huh.
Like the earlier point.
Yep. Yep. Um, this is a fun one. So we were speaking in case closed about. So let me just make the point. I made a point and I asked for the panel to agree or disagree or to comment on it, which is basically whenever you find yourself explaining yourself, then something has gone wrong, right?
Mm,
Um, in general, right?
right.
Something has gone wrong. You've made some kind of a misstep, and um, I then mentioned there too that my general approach towards may a lot of conflict situations is to not engage, right? And that 99% of the time it just goes away, and I didn't have to spend my energy on that. I didn't have to get diverted into some BS. I didn't have to drag through like it's like it just freaking rolls off, right? And it's a great strategy. One particular instance comes to mind where um, there's this guy that made a video of me on YouTube, right? And the crazy thumbnail and the whole nine, right? It's probably not still up. I should have downloaded it or something. And someone asked me like, "Oh, so here's what you got to do. You got to do this, and then you got to do this, and then you got to do this, right? Let's engage. Let's do." And I was just like, "No, I didn't say a word about it. I didn't. It's nothing, and nothing happened. Like there's a counter example that I can give about when you do engage with the person, and it's actually the same person someone else engaged with, and they're still entangled in some kind of crazy dance a year later.
Right. Right.
And I just because this thing works. It's like magic. It's like just stop. Don't go with your feeling. It's not. Look, I'm not saying that. Oh, I got ice going through my veins and not like. No, I felt it. I was like, oh, this like damn, they got me. Okay, and I sat there and I processed it. But then the thinking, you think, you project forward. You're like, okay, what is going to happen? And this thinking is also based on experience and habit, right? Of just knowing that, look, I can't, there is no, there's no, this is a cave that I'm walking into and it only has one entry and one exit. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to do all kinds of stuff, and then I'm going to turn around and walk out. And it's like, why? I could just keep walking. Why do I have to enter that cave? Okay, so I don't have any. It's not my house. I don't have to go in there and clean it up. I don't have any work there. There's no gold there. Okay, just to use an analogy, right? Just to use a picture or a metaphor. There is really nothing in there for me. A lot of people think it's their job to go into that cave and set things right or whatever it is that they think they're going to achieve. I just look at it as it's going to be wasted energy. Who knows what might happen if I go in there? Blah, blah, blah. And I move on and I'm able to achieve stuff. Again, the other person who went in that cave, they're still entangled in BS with this person. So, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts about this
I
conflict
don't
thing?
remember what I said. I think you started by saying that I said something. I answered that as an answer to that question.
No,
Um,
no. I didn't reference you. I was just saying that I put it out there.
oh, right,
Uh,
right,
uh, yeah, because it's kind of related to this, the whole idea of having to explain yourself, right? So don't engage, right, as opposed
right.
to engaging. And I just tend to default more on the don't go in the cave, don't fight that battle. There is no through line. Like it's not a tunnel that you're gonna go through and you get to the other side. It's a cave with one entrance, one exit. Why go in?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Proving that whole like I was listening to something or was watching something earlier today, and they were just making that point about um the whole compulsory need that people have to prove that they're right about something, or to, as you suggested, set things right, and it doesn't do anything. It has no impact, and all it does is probably does you damage.
Yeah.
Right. That's all that does. But it's like a strong urge that I think people have. It's a really strong urge, and I'll admit that when I was younger, it beat me a few times, several times.
You out there practicing sign language?
Right. now I just don't even, I don't mess with it. Oh, that's what you think? Okay. Well, what do you think about it? I'm straight. I mean, I'm serious, man. In part, and this is interesting too, because it has to do with this principle. You know, what was it? Is it Saint Francis of Assisi, or is it? I think it's Francis of Assisi. Somebody can correct me on this. Preach the gospel at all, and when necessary, use words. Right. And that's kind of my approach. That's my approach to any sort of, potential contentious discussion. Certainly any sense of sort of proselytizing has been totally supplanted by just this idea that I'm not going to say anything to you until you ask me a direct question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you ask me a direct question, I'm loaded up and ready. We can talk. I'm going to say what I think. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to say anything unless you ask me a direct question, because it is a total waste of energy. It's a total waste. And most of it is going to be them either misunderstanding you because they just aren't able to, they're not capable of understanding, or misunderstanding you intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Which of course is worse. And it's just like, look, I don't really care to have that kind of, I don't really, and listen, I think there's a natural progression for people. I mean, we all know this sort of old folks, they get to a certain age and like, look, I ain't got to tell you nothing. I ain't got to explain to you nothing. And you can either take it or leave it. I don't care. There's that kind of, I think, self-assurance. I think that comes with age, and having more of these sorts of experiences, having bad experiences with folks when you were trying to help them, but they were not, there's no way that they were going to even move an inch. It's just all this wasted energy. And perhaps maybe I don't know. It just seems to me that those scenarios are just totally useless. So I don't even deal with it anymore.
Stuart says something here, and it's I would say statistic. Well, okay. He says that basically sometimes ignoring someone and then emboldens the tyrant in them, right? So, yes, that is true sometimes. However, and I'm not saying that you're claiming that you should therefore engage people. There's two ways in which I can look at this. The first way is this. It's not like I believe in karma or something of a particular sort, right? I do believe in karma of the tautological karma. There's karma is a tautology, which just basically says you're
trying to avoid my criticism. I see you've grown. But you've grown.
It's not you already know my position on it. And you know that I'm not saying karma the way you say.
I like the prefix. I like the prefix. That staves off. Okay, you go.
Yeah, karma's a tautology that basically says that you are your actions, right? That is true. That is true. Your actions, especially internally, because I'm that kind of from inward out. I'm like, if you're messed up with you're messed up. Like until you and you, it's gonna manifest. You're gonna be bumping into the world in messed up ways. It just happens, man. Um, so it's not like I believe in karma, but I don't. It's not my job, okay, to to tamper to kill the tyrant in somebody, right? Like,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna make sure I fix them that so that they don't. It's like I don't know that the world is gonna go out there and fix them, but I do know that they're gonna have way more friction in their life than is necessary, okay? Because of again the simple principle, it just is true, right? And then the second point to make on what Stuart is saying is there is a I think like 5% of the time that you do have to actually have to engage, and that is based on those are things judgments that you make based on thinking. You assess the situation. Is this person worth engaging? What kind of damage would happen? And then how do I engage is another thing as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can decide to engage, but I'm not going to engage directly. I'm going to circumvent this person. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, right? There is a there's this guy that talks about business that when he talks about things such as like, hey, uh, should a hole be dug, right? And should the hole be dug here, okay? And should the hole be dug with a backhoe, or just talk about layers of question, right? Should it be dug with a machine or this or that? And then should I be the one digging the hole? A lot of times people just conflate all these things. They don't parse things out like this. So it's like, okay, yes, this person is worth engaging with because they're the big shot or the top guy, and they actually are perhaps rational. They're not an idiot. They will pose a something to you down the line if you don't engage, and then you decide how you're going to engage, and it might be somewhere you go through someone else, through something else, you watch them this way, that way, or the other. But it's a rare time that you're encountering such a beast.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's keep going.
18. Stay goal oriented. Toxic people can be very distracting. They can cause you to lose mental and emotional focus when they create drama or cause problems. Do your best to shake it off. Keep steering things back to your goal or the problem that needs to be solved. Toxic people are many things, but most of them are not stupid, and once they realize you are unaffected by them, they will typically back off. Number 15. Remember
Hey, 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 shake it off.
Yes.
Yeah, shake it off. That one is pretty much standard and self-explanatory, right? It's like, okay, shake it off. Uh, you know, one might ask how. So, whenever this kind of advice, it almost sounds like it's a pep talk type advice, because people don't want to hold on to crap, right? They want to shake it off, right? So just telling them to shake it off doesn't really help. It's just more like a pep talk. Like, hey, you know what? Shake it off. I'm more interested typically in how one shakes things off. But then again, that's because of my my preference as a thinker and a model building type person, where like I want to have a model for everything, especially your internal workings. And then I want to be like, okay, which button do you push? What lever do you pull? What should you do? How do you do it in order to shake it off, right? Because the just pep talk of shake it off will work if, for example, I wear the predominantly extroverted feeling focused, whereby if my crew, my cult, my tribe, my tribe just tells me to shake it, then that solves the problem, right? All of a sudden I'm okay again. All of a sudden I'm regulated again. But it's like, no, the regulation has to come from within. But so good advice, but it's more like a pep talk. I don't know if you had any comments on the shake it off comment.
Yeah. So I like the goal oriented nature of it. So of this. So yeah, shaking it off. That's that's one of those things where it's okay. So in in jazz improvisation, Miles Davis, in a certain period, he was playing with. He tended to play with more space, right? And basically, and this is a challenging concept to understand, because you don't recreate something by talking about what you're not doing. You can only talk about what you actually are doing, right? And so space as a concept, empty space, is a difficult concept to the logistics of which are challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I deal with that is, rather than thinking about the space, I'm thinking about what it is that I am doing. And it's useful to erect a model. Okay, so rather than saying, okay, well, I want to play with space, I'm trying to do my Miles Davis thing, I want to play with more space, rather than thinking of it that way, I can use as a model something that is executing well that concept. That way, I don't have to. So, because how do you play with space? What do? You're editing yourself. Say, okay, every other thought I'll play. How does that actually work? It's very abstract. So with respect to like advice like shake it off, that seems to be like one of those sorts of it's like playing with space. It's like
negative advice. Yeah, there's no positive, no
like,
content.
Yeah. What are you telling me? Okay, just don't do anything. Okay, what does that mean? Don't do anything. What am I? Because I'm still breathing. So what are we talking about here? So what I prefer is to have something to actually draw your attention. And so the aspect of that advice being goal oriented, that's good, because then the goal can be the thing that you're focusing on. Okay? Don't worry about that over there, because you ain't got time to be worried about that over there. Impending doom, is, will arrive if you do not address the stuff that is listed here. This stuff must be taken care of. So doing something, this idea of the idle hands or the devil's workshop, right? Because, okay, well, just sit there and do nothing. Well, I have a 9-year-old son, right? That's not a good idea for me to tell him, hey, just sit there and do nothing. There's probably going to be he's got a lot of energy. He's probably not going to actually be doing nothing. But if I tell him, hey, do this thing, right, at least that gives him something to draw his attention. And so I think that's the strength of being goal oriented in the midst of dealing with a bunch of toxic people.
Yeah, well, 100% agree. Time, and if I could link it back to a previous point about the self-criticism and knowing that you're not all that you could be, that is all tied to there's not enough time. I have so much things to do. because I am action oriented, and in this case, I'm saying that it's a good thing to be action oriented. I do tend to take a long view. I'm always looking to the future, so that's a hence. It's so natural that like I don't even think about it as looking towards to the future. But I haven't grown up now. I know that that's what I'm doing. It's just a natural thing that I'm always kind of looking to the future. Hence, when you're looking to the future, you're looking to improve. It's kind of like an obvious, like you're always looking to improve. So when you have all these things going on, you realize that you have limited time and resources. Hence, just dwelling on the haters is definitely it helps. It helps you when it comes to not dwelling with the haters because you have a mission to be on. So yeah, so I 100% agree.
And this is interesting too because commitment is another way to address the same issue. It's another way to say the same thing. It's because if you have a commitment, that means that by the nature of a commitment, it means that you have to exclude other things.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nature of a commitment. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is also can provide the same sort of opportunity, and have the same effect is having a goal, is to have a commitment. That'll keep you also away from the riffraff. All right, let's keep going.
Remember the right to be happy. It is fully within your rights to be a happy person who associates with emotionally healthy people, regardless of whatever reasons a toxic person has for their behavior. While it's nearly impossible to ignore what others think of you, you don't have to compare yourself to others, and you can always take people's opinions with a grain of salt. This way, no matter what toxic people are thinking or doing, your self-worth comes from within. Dealing with toxic people is something we all have to confront in our lives from time to time.
Okay, they're giving a summation at that point. But let me say that I'm a little disappointed by the last point because no one has a right to be happy.
I guess you beat me to it. I was gonna scream cap while it was playing, but I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be rude. Right, right. Anyway, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, nobody has a right to be happy. It doesn't exist. No one has a right to be happy, and happiness is flimsy.
Mm-hmm.
It's fickle, right? Happiness is not achievable, not lasting happiness, because happiness changes like the weather. Whatever happens changes happiness, right? So every event, every current event has an impact on that's super flimsy. Now, you can be resolute and you can be confident in what it is that you are in a particular job or particular task or whatever that you have to associate with funky folks. You can, and that can override whatever, additional stress or additional worrying or just energy spent dealing with, slumlords. You can you can do that, right? But that's going to take something much deeper than freaking flimsy happiness. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not happy to have to work with or associate with toxic people. And you don't have to be happy. You don't have to be happy for that. But you can see it as a necessary. It's a consequence of the fall. It's the nature of reality. It's for all have sinned and fallen short, right? So it's human nature. It's something that's a necessary aspect of life, right? So you can see it as that way. You don't have to, you don't have to like it. You don't have to be happy about it, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This. So the right to be happy. It's similar to when people, and the one people use more often is people use the word deserve,
Oh,
and
oh.
I deserve. Once I hear that, I chuckle a little bit inside, and
I love when the marketers that use that. You deserve to be this. You deserve. Man, no, you don't deserve a dadgum thing. All you deserve is to die. I'm sorry, man. That stuff is that's too much. I can't take it.
And I don't I don't go trying to, when someone tells me that they deserve what they deserve, and they're typically they're too far gone for me to correct, and I don't fall into the trap of needing to go in there and say, oh, try to correct them at all. As I say, I just chuckle a little bit within, and I just listen to whatever the hell they're saying that they deserve. I think I deserve this, and it tends to be a lot of times it's not them saying some kind of like, I deserve to be free. Like, you can't lock me in this basement. It's not that.
Oh,
It's not the basic rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness type stuff, where one could understand that those are very base. At least we can all agree on that. And by the way, that's a political concept. Rights are a political concept. I don't know where we started making it a psychological thing. Like, the rights are a political concept that says, hey, if you don't get to do this to me because we both agree that you wouldn't like it. It's basically based on the golden rule, right? You wouldn't like it if I did it to you, so you don't do it to me. Hence, we have a society. That's it. It's not some kind of. It doesn't exist outside of human beings, where like the universe wants you to be happy. The universe, you deserve all that kind of stuff. And then my point about it not being about these more fundamental things, which again are political, but at least one can agree that, hey, yes, I don't think you deserve to be locked in a cage and whipped, all day for no reason. Okay, like I'll grant you that. Typically, people are doing that thing where I think it was Two Dads Reacting. You played a video where somebody, a particular woman, described a good man. A good man is good in himself and is good in this and good that, Jesus Christ, right? They describe Jesus. And then typically you'll get a woman that perhaps is with that man and then leaves the man because she deserves X. And X is this one thing which the guy just doesn't quite, I deserve a man that makes me feel X, right? That's typically how it manifests itself. It's not even in the level of, again, of, I shouldn't be locked in chains. There's a very frivolous thing that people just tag this deserve thing to. It's strange. And these are things I've heard these things in real life, and also you can hear it every day on YouTube and TikTok and stuff like that. I just deserve to be, whatever.
Girl, you deserve to be happy. It's like, come on, man. Nobody deserves anything. I mean, it's and I know that we are a secular society now, but the Christian worldview, just the basic concept of it, okay? You're not worth anything. Okay? You're such garbage that you require a savior. Okay? You don't deserve anything. You're lucky. You're blessed. You're it's by grace. Mercy. It required mercy because you were such a heathen. You don't deserve anything.
Well, I just gotta practice some self-care and self-love, and I'm
oh my
I'm,
goodness, man.
I'm healing.
Oh,
The forever
just-
healers, man. Forever healers.
oh
Always
my
healing.
goodness. Oh my goodness. That is just and of course one of the rather distasteful capitulations of this, lack of like personal humility or something, I don't know, is this, I'm a 10. I got this, I got that, I'm a 10. I'm a 10. Everybody's a 10. Everybody's a 10. You have to estimate yourself. I mean, you need to have a high opinion of yourself. I'm a 10. I'm a 10. It's like, get out of here. First of all, you're about a 2. But you ain't no 10. 10 means perfect. Nobody's perfect. It's just, it's freaking, it's just, it's,
Yeah, and
this whole thing.
the whole inverse is the case, right? I mean, a point earlier was made. I believe the first point we made, that was number 15, was about the negative self-talk thing, which kind of dovetails with this whole idea of, this is positive self-talk now, where they're like, oh, I'm a 10 and stuff like that. However, the people whom do achieve things in life, some of the people whom perhaps these people would take as role models, and perhaps even are also gifted and endowed in many different ways, that's not the way they think. They didn't get anywhere by thinking that I'm a 10. That's not the way they think the exact opposite, and they're psychologically more healthy because of it. And they get a lot of things done, knowing that they're not worth ish, right? That's it. It is a strange thing. This new age, new wave. Yeah, the healing gets me. The deserve gets me. The self care and self worth and self whatever. All that stuff kind of.
I love
Yeah,
it. See, because I'm going to tell you, self love is like. It's I know maybe this seems strange, but it's another example of negative advice, because they don't tell you anything to do. They don't say anything. Oh, you just need to have self-love. I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what it is.
You ruined your relationship with your mom because you acted a fool this one time, and yes, your mom is a little bit toxic, but then you allowed her into your life by you took care of her that 6 months, which you shouldn't have taken care of her, and then you're resentful. Rather than address these things, right? Rather than say, okay, X, Y, Z, you did. It's like, now you just need to have more self-love. And then it's like, yeah. And then they take that, and then they go into the world, and then they repeat the same thing with some other person, and blah, blah, blah. And then they come back to the self-love, and I'm just healing again. And it's like, what?
Yeah. I mean, or even just to have like and this is a pretty simple construct, and this is a way that you could actually walk out actual what am I trying to say? Self-respect, basic self-respect, and dare I say self-love, right? Is the whole Petersonian concept of treating yourself like a community. The past you, the present you, the future you. Always prioritizing the future you. Always doing stuff to set up the future you. Putting off what is the what is it? Gratification, delayed gratification. The idea of delayed gratification, the idea of putting yourself through more struggle now for the sake of the future you. Making decisions that are hard to make now for the sake of the future you. That's actually self-love and self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
But this crap that they talk about, it's like, goodness, man.
That's why, by the way, that's why I like to talk about small egos, right? Being the problem. as opposed to when people did you say the inverse? They say big ego,
Right.
because when you do these things and you grind and you have a great deal of self-respect for yourself, that's when you see what I'm saying, right? Like that's the healthy place to be, and I envision that, I model that as being as being a big ego, um, an ego that's, and also just to add to that. Now I know it's a sidebar, but it also makes it such that the little things don't matter, right? The little things can't poke your ego because, again, all the way through to the transcendent and the whole thing about you being okay with existence, right? When you are encapsulated that way with the sense of awe and the sense of wonder of just being here and of
Yep.
being in and of itself, right? That then what that is what I call a nice big healthy ego. Nothing can touch it. Obviously you're flesh and blood, so flesh and blood stuff's gonna happen, right? You're gonna have when somebody says the right thing to you, your blood pressure is gonna rise up a little bit, but it's not gonna go to that ego place where you're now just reacting and how I'm me and all that kind of crap, because you're living, you're existing, you're enjoying being.
Oh man, this stuff is so flipped upside down. It's breathtaking, man. Uh, yeah. This I had something that was occurring to me. What was the last thing that we just said? What was the last thing I said? Uh,
You were talking about self-sacrifice, prioritizing your future self, all
oh,
towards
right, right.
the.
Um, okay, so this is another one of these examples of a certain a certain kind of person that may be oriented a certain way, trying to tell somebody else that what it is that they're doing, the way that they're doing it, how they think about it is not healthy for them. Though that person is actually way, way, way more productive and more satisfied in their life. But because they're not doing it the way this other person is saying that they should do it, it's like a person that has that sort of kind of self-deprecating, humble kind of a thing, doesn't talk highly about themselves, you know, is sober-minded about this idea of not deserving anything and being blessed and fortunate to even be allowed to be alive, or to even have, the opportunities. Like if you look at it that way, so, oh, see, no, you should, no, you deserve something. No, you shouldn't be talking to yourself. Yeah, but look at your life. Look at the way that you're living. Look at the stuff you're complaining to me like every other day about some hot mess that you're in the middle of. I'm not complaining about anything. I'm doing just fine. And matter of fact, I'm producing more than you producing X, Y, and Z. But you still have to tell me to change the way that I'm thinking about it. Can I just think what I want to think? It's the way that I want to think about it. If it's producing certain kind of results, no, I got to think the way that you want me. It's like freaking folks try to control you. Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah, we're not in the same planet. Most we all know about physical variants of things, right? Big star, small star, big tree, small tree, this, that, and the other in the physical world, genetics, and all that kind of stuff. But the way people vary internally is way more vast. And I was actually having a conversation with my wife about this, about that people are not as conscious as you think they are. you know
Yeah.
and one can play with this idea philosophically and go into the whole NPC theory, or the whole and non-player character, like people are they actually there, or even is it the Matrix or the simulation type stuff, right? Like where it's like, but whether those are just analogies, but there is a truth to the fact that there are a lot of people that are not as conscious as what you might think. And I mean, when you go down this line, people think that you're making some kind of a judgment point or nobody. Like, I'm just stating facts, right? And if you are the person that is more conscious and is noticing something, well, then you might be tempted to make some kinds of judgments. But them on their end, they're not. They're not. It doesn't matter because everybody lives from the inside out, right? So you just simply see and notice, and that's it. It doesn't change anything. In they're living from the inside out, and they're just fine. But from your point of view, they're just off, right? Their places, the things you'll be saying, or especially when it comes to all this kind of um, psychological health. Let's put it under that umbrella. Psychological health, getting things done. What this show is about: being able to regulate yourself, being able to control yourself and control the outcomes that you have, uh, being satisfied and content with life, all those kinds of things, and the mechanisms by which they work. Some people are just in a different galaxy with that whole, with even beginning to even understand any of that, and they never will. Okay, and yeah, I was just telling my wife that, hey, you gotta be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a oh, goodness, man. It's and I can be okay with that. What you're talking, I can be okay with that. What I still struggle with what I still struggle with is that person that, as Stewart here is saying, that knows not themselves, trying to tell you, trying to spread their poison. It's like, goodness, man. Can you even see yourself right now?
Yeah, and I also brought up this in in my conversation with my wife earlier. The thing is, if you are privileged enough, or maybe if you're cursed enough to observe these types of people through life, right? They keep on, especially there's a certain type of person that doesn't know how to deal with others, how to get stuff from others. Um, uh, Kaizo in his channel, we were talking about like the black tax, the immigrant tax, right? People, immigrants come over and you got to send money back, right? It's the thing, and everyone in your family and blah blah blah. There's some people who are quite skilled at doing this stuff where they message you all the time, or in a way that's not uncomfortable. Obviously, like maybe they shoot you a message every month, ask how you're doing and stuff like that. You see that they're making progress in their life, and maybe once every 2 years they're in a jam, and then they ask for something, and boom, they get it. And then there's the other type of person where the only thing they ever say is to ask you for crap, right? Like,
right.
And they tell you that, oh, I'm doing this I need this stuff for this school stuff, right? And you never see the school that they're going to. No results ever come out. There's always something, right? So I'm just juxtaposing these two types of people. This type of person that doesn't know how to do these kinds of things correctly, they go through life, keep on making the same mistake. They think that there's something unfair about life, or that there's just some, like, oh, I don't know what it is. Things just don't work out for me. Why don't things work out for me? Why are all these people getting all these things? And I've seen I see it all the time, right? I just talked about the immigrant example, right? Where you notice these family members, the ones that have messed up lives, do these messed up things, okay? And they're just burning bridge after bridge, because you're not the only person they're doing it to. So they're burning bridge after bridge after bridge, and they're always talking about, oh, I don't know why, last whatever, blah blah blah, and they throw Jesus in there, and amen, and I will overcome, whatever, and you're just like, oh my God. Then also in real life, there are these. We have this particular person, me and my wife. There's this particular, let's just, because domestic help is typical in Africa, right? So whatever, this domestic help person that does this type of stuff doesn't understand how to bring value, okay, and then complains about why their life is the way it is, and it's just a repeating cycle over and over again. And it's like they never quite see what they're doing. Somehow they think that I don't know. I don't know what they I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Anyways.
Goodness. Speaking of spouse and wife and all that, tomorrow I'll be celebrating 15 years of marriage. 15 years.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Tomorrow is 15 years. That's right.
Don't mess it up.
Yeah. You know, I was joking. I think in one of my streams yesterday, I was joking about how do you say, thank you, Stuart, for that. Congratulations. How you stay married. You know how you stay married? It's by refusing to get divorced.
People are always looking for the secret sauce. Like, oh,
that's the secret. Hey, that's the trick right there. Don't file paperwork. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you stay married. You don't get divorced. And
trippy.
all of these other ways that people devise, and I'm not suggesting that it is bad to do counseling or, you know, communication, you know, study communication, to work on communication, to try to, you know, all of that stuff is great. I'm not saying that stuff is bad. You know, spending time together, you know, all of that kind of stuff. All of that stuff is wonderful. That's great. But that ain't what keeps you married. What keeps you married is two people that refuse to get divorced. And unfortunately, these days, it only takes one to decide that they're done. And they don't have to have a reason. They don't have to have a valid reason.
But they deserve.
That's right. I deserve to be happy. I'm out. Well, good luck chasing that happiness. Let's see how that works out for you.
That lady in the video that you were playing, actually, when you were going back and forth, when this particular woman said, "Hey, good man, good this," and then she brought up the humor. Like, oh, I don't F with his humor, for example. Like, that would be the reason why this
Right.
Jesus character. Right. Now, for one thing, it's kind of it's really, 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 and I think Kevin Samuels talked about the Frankenstein monster that people are looking for, right?
Yeah.
It's really, really stupid to think that you can get everything out of somebody.
Yep.
You know, it's very weird. It's like you want this infinite dimensional coin or something. It's like, no, the things are, you can't have this and that. You go to the sales example, you can't be the sniper salesman that goes deep and also be the surface level. You can't. You can't, right? That's one thing. But when the other lady, the woman was more sensible, then pushed back and say, well, then that's why all these many ladies are out here, you know, divorce, whatever, and find her. And then the first one just couldn't. She had to say, she was like, well, and then maybe that's okay, right? You know, like,
no, again, yeah. So what the lady said is, that's why there's a bunch of 40-year-old ladies with a bunch of cats. And then she said, and then the other woman said, well, maybe that's what they like. That's what she actually said as a response. Well, maybe that's what they like. See, I'm sorry. In the words of Kevin Samuels, die alone. Die alone, man. This stuff is totally ridiculous. Because the one woman who, and I'm not giving the sort of host, the one that, you know, started off with, women are walking away from good guys and X, Y, and Z, when she was describing, she was clarifying what she was talking about, the kind of guy, she described Jesus. All right. She described like some dude walking on water, healing the sick, somebody that's, dividing the loaves of bread and
raising the dead,
the dude that's like, He's on a white horse in the clouds. You know, you can visibly see the dude like ascend to the right hand of the Father. I mean, this is who she's describing. But that dude wasn't good enough. She had to have that dude plus, you know, he had to rock with her humor. He had to be. It's like, dude, what
Her
the
precise
heck?
style of humor, just the right kind of humor.
Oh my goodness gracious! This stuff is totally ridiculous. you can't make this stuff up at all, man. And I'll admit that I have over the last, because you know there's a bunch of these Kevin Samuels channels that are sort of popping up, people you know, posting stuff, and it doesn't seem that whoever owns the estate owns the rights to the stuff is particularly litigious, because they're just posting all kinds of stuff, like, you know, taking stuff from Instagram and all kind of stuff and just throwing this stuff up. And so there's been a lot of stuff that's sort of trending and keeps popping up on there. And RIPKS. RIPKS. Anyhow, let's finish this out and then we'll call it a day.
Time. These individuals seem to find a way of worming their way into people's lives and creating drama and chaos in order to manipulate others to suit their needs. But you don't have to let them ruin your life and hinder your progress. Implementing these techniques will allow you to handle difficult and toxic people more effectively and decrease the likelihood of their ill effects on you. What do you think? How do you deal with difficult and toxic people? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up.
All right. Let's go back to our other thing. This has been I think, a rather satisfying conclusion to this three-part series. On protecting yourself, strategies for freeing yourself from toxic people. You have some final words?
I would agree. This video, even though, like, I you know, when I saw 15, you know, I was like, I got triggered. I was perturbed. I had heart palpitations. I had to breathe. But even with the redundancy and all that, number one, the redundancy wasn't even stupid redundancy. Like they weren't. It wasn't stupid. Even with the redundancy and all that, I think that the points were well made. The kind of one of the things that stood out to me was if I were to kind of put, you know, because there's many themes that were mentioned through this, but one thing that keeps coming up is that whole extroverted feeling thing. But if there's a bow that I can put on it, is solving the problem rather than finding the person that's to blame is typically the best way to go. And this is not about, you know, this is for yourself now as an individual. And if you notice that somebody does the opposite, you need to watch out for them, that's for sure. But even as yourself as an individual, always just look at a problem, right? Okay, oh my God, you know, Moses hasn't been taking out the trash. I don't know if it's Moses' job to take out the trash. He hasn't been taking out the trash, and now this stuff is piled up in the back, and you know, it's like, rather than just be stuck in there, it's like, okay, how are we gonna solve this? It's like, okay, Moses, here's what we're gonna get: X, Y, and Z. Get this bag, this thing, and this thing. Get the rake. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna gather it up. We're gonna go find a public dumpster somewhere, and then we're gonna put it in the trash, right? As opposed to having a family meeting And because look, the lesson will happen too, and there will be maybe. Look, you get my point. As opposed to let's have a sit down to talk about how Moses forgot that he doesn't take out the trash, and then that's not solving the problem, and you're not teaching anybody anything. You're causing a lot of discord and dysfunction in the environment. Discord is a word, by the way, that people use wrongly these days. But anyways, I mean, that's a little pet peeve of mine, because you're causing a lot of issues rather than just be like, okay, let's fix the problem, Moses, because Moses knows he messed up, right? He knows he messed up. So it's like, what do we do to fix the problem? And he'll probably remember that situation for the rest of his life. Like, I remember this time, and and the trash was piled up in the back. I was supposed to take it into the dumpster, but I left them in the back of the house, and this and that, and there were flies everywhere. And my dad told me to get this and that, and boom, and then we did, and then we had to drive around town, and then we found this dumpster, and we put it in, and blah blah blah. That's the real thing and the real lesson, and that will he will learn a lot of responsibility for that, rather than sit down so he can point the finger in Moses' face. That is the main thing here, and it was one of the points, right, about basically you finding blame as opposed to fixing the problem. So that's a big one, and those are my closing thoughts.
Yeah, I found this to be, like I said, a very satisfying conclusion to this 3-part series, and I suggest that folks that they're just checking out part 3, go back and check out part 1 and part 2, which I think were very, very good. This has been, I think we've done a lot of really good shows. This series has been one of my favorites. Thus far.
I agree.
Yeah, and make sure you come back on Sunday for Case Closed. It'll be on this channel. That's our panel show, trending topics with an all-star panel, and so that'll be a lot of fun. We always have a good time. Tense conversation at times, but always a really, really good discussion. Yeah, so come and check that out. Tomorrow I am piloting a new show with a fellow saxophonist, a great saxophone player and educator, also works at the same institution I work at, and it's going to be called Tenor Talks, and it's a 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time show, 3 p.m. tomorrow. Tune in for that. Also tune in tomorrow morning. If you're on YouTube, tune in on YouTube tomorrow morning for a Car Thunder episode. And I will not be doing a Two Dads React this week because, as I said before, tomorrow is my wedding anniversary. And if I want to last another 15 years, then I probably shouldn't stream that evening. So I won't do that. Instead, we're going to be doing probably dinner and a movie, and so that's going to be some quality time, as it were. And so if you're watching, sweetie, don't clip me, because cats don't be trying to clip me now. If you're listening, sweetie, love you, and please, folks, well wishes on 15 more years, at least, and all of that. Okay, enough of that soft talk. And but yeah, 15 years tomorrow. But what I will be doing is I'll be posting. I appeared on Courtney Michelle's channel as part of a panel, and I think that clip is about 30 minutes long. I'm going to post that on my channel, just that clip on my channel tomorrow night at 10 or whatever, so that the algorithm knows that I'm still reserving that time. And that'll also give some folks some new content to engage with. So that is my time. That is our time. Again, Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Y'all have a good one. Be well. Peace.
Peace.